Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. Yesterday we had the August patch drop, which has some interesting new features and balance changes being added, many of which are actually different than what we were expecting from the early public preview. Let's jump in, starting with the general changes. The first is wolves and similar predatory animals used to change their attack distance based on difficulty, actually reacting to your units from farther away at higher difficulty levels, and that's now been much more standardized. Interestingly, now wolves are also able to see villagers from farther away than other units, as that is their main target. Next, a major change for archer civs is the crossbow's cost has been increased by 100 resources. Crossbow is still a great upgrade, giving more attack, range, accuracy, HP, and critically a shorter creation time. Bodkin arrow, in contrast, is similarly priced and only gives range and attack, so crossbow is still a much better value even after the increase, if for no other reason than just the creation time boost alone. Given as you're often considering these techs just as you're reaching Castle Age and haven't been able to produce villagers while advancing, I find it's usually a moment you're floating some extra food and possibly gold. The cost for crossbow is still pretty low as well, so I don't think it's a matter of being able to afford the crossbowman upgrade right away, and to me that's the wrong way to think of it. Instead, the cost increase will more likely have a ripple effect to something else down the line, like an eco upgrade you won't be able to afford right now that you previously could, giving a cascading effect downstream beyond just the face value of 100 extra resources. At face value, this change is a little surprising considering archer civs as a group are generally below average, especially compared to civilizations with a cavalry focus, though that may be more true at lower levels, and I imagine this is based on pro feedback around archer power spikes. Correspondingly, in Imperial Age, Arbalester is also getting significantly more expensive. In this case, Arbalester is giving relatively less, while for a much larger cost, and actually Bracer's cheaper cost looks much more tempting to prioritize, giving attack and range. Arbalester, especially now, is actually a bit of a debate for when it's no longer worth it, and combined with the crossbow's cost increase, this is all a pretty significant nerf to a lot of civilizations who would regularly incorporate these units. Next up, another change is for siege and armored elephants, which are now affected by siege engineers. I wouldn't view this so much as a general improvement to the unit, but actually a specific buff for Bengalis and Hindustanis, as Dravidians and Gurjaras don't have the tech. To put the armored elephant balance into perspective, here against a building with masonry, we have Dravidians as a baseline, with 35 damage per minute. In contrast, Hindustanis with siege engineers bring that up to 42. Bengalis with siege engineers and 20% faster attacking elephants come in at 51 damage per minute, and Gurjaras now lag slightly behind with 40% extra damage from a civ bonus. In contrast, a capped ram with siege engineers does 35, and a fully upgraded siege ram does 47, meaning Bengali armored elephants are pound for pound looking pretty scary. Another elephant change is the elephant archer's cavalry archer armor has been improved from -7 to -4. This is relevant for skirmishers and genitours and makes them a lot less painful counter than they were before. Previously, those units were doing all of their regular bonuses plus 7 more, which felt pretty extreme, especially if gold was an important factor. At the same time, elephant archers also had their cost reduced by 10 food, which together means they're really pushing this unit. They obviously want this unit to be more popular, especially for Bengalis and Dravidians, who are meant to be the prime elephant archer civilizations, having notable bonuses. And both of these civs have really been struggling with their online win rates, so we'll see if this is enough to give them a nice Castle Age option especially. Finally, to close out the general changes, Stonewalls now have 20% more HP in Feudal, though their Castle Age HP is unchanged. Remember, Stonewalls have half the HP in Feudal Age as Castle already, so this just brings them a bit closer together. I find this change interesting given how much the devs seem to prefer feudal aggression to fast castling or stone walling, and have consistently made walling more time consuming and expensive, though this could also be something mainly with closed maps in mind to make walls a bit stronger early on. But now let's dig into the civilization specific changes. The first is the Bengalis, where we notice the Slavs' old unique tech is back, now as a Bengali passive bonus, giving monks extra armor. In some cases, like scouts and light cavalry, this doesn't make an impact, thanks to bonus damage playing such a large role already and the fact it ignores armor. They do take 1 less attack from knights and 3 less from crossbows, which are of course common units, but the biggest difference is for pikes, who take twice as many attacks, and elite skirmishers, who take 2.5 times as many attacks to bring down a Bengali monk. Clearly, the lower the attack of an enemy unit, the more this bonus matters, and of course Bengalis have some decent monks already, with a lot of upgrades available. Considering the elephant archer and siege elephant buffs as well, it's quite a few approaches being taken to help Bengalis out. Still though, it feels like it may not be enough to fully address what's clearly been the worst civilization online recently, but it's a step in the right direction. The patch notes also mention the Elephant Archer and Armored Elephants now take bonus damage after armor subtraction, which I imagine most people's eyes glaze over when they read and assume it's a buff, though it strikes me as actually quite a bit more complicated than that. Remember, bonus damage goes through regular types of armor, so this is pretty situational and technical, applying only to cases where a Bengali elephant unit has resistance to some sort of bonus damage. In the case of siege elephants against halberdiers, when you look at the elephant's resistance to cavalry and elephant bonuses, the new calculation theoretically leads to more damage being taken, at least the way I'm reading it, so this isn't necessarily a buff in all cases. That said, against units with small bonus damage, like elite skirmishers against elephant archers, this is an improvement, especially considering they're now taking less bonus damage from that unit to begin with. Next up, the Burgundians have been a pretty average performing civ, but it seems the devs are looking to nerf them. First, their eco upgrade discount is softening a bit from 50% to minus 40%. Functionally, for feudal and castle upgrades to give some perspective, that's an extra 153 food and 105 wood, so certainly not an insignificant difference. On top of that, the Coustier's charge attack was also nerfed by 5 damage. Aside from just less damage overall, the main implication is the elite Coustier can no longer one-shot a handful of units that have 40 HP and very low melee armor, which includes villagers and a few archer-type units. Of course, in any fight, you'll always have a few units that would otherwise have been finished off before and would now be left with 5 or less HP, needing 1 extra attack. Overall, it's a pretty subtle nerf to what's generally considered quite a good unique unit. Moving on to Dravidians, their only direct change is gaining access to bombard cannons. In open and especially closed games, Imperial Age hasn't really been their weakness, so I don't think this is going to save them from being a pretty bottom tier civ on open maps. Presumably, this is intended to cover their weak stable, which would otherwise leave them incredibly vulnerable to onagers. With such a focus on infantry, skirmishers, and elephant archers, that's always a unit they can struggle against, which Bombard Cannon now gives them an answer to. Remember, their faster attacking elephant archers are also less weak to skirmishers now as well, which is another indirect buff. Moving on to another Indian civilization, next we have the Gurjaras. I covered their changes preemptively a while back as its own video, but the devs have gone in a slightly different direction since then in the final release. Their mill trickle bonus still has diminishing returns, but now gives about 15% less food if you garrison all of your starting animals. Even before this change was announced, I'd been watching some high-level players doing fast castles on Arena and found a Gurjar player had fewer resources collected at 16 minutes than a Tatar and Berber player, all of them going for the same strategy and very competent players. So I've gone into this a little skeptical of the idea that Gurjars get a big early advantage from their sheep bonus. The point is, I just haven't been fully convinced this bonus is driving their top tier win rate, and hopefully toning this down will end up bringing them back to earth a bit instead of people just abandoning the bonus entirely. The patch notes even explicitly give us the formula, depriving me of a good time trying to work it out, though the sneaky natural log and +1 might have made that tricky to reverse engineer. The way the numbers work out and compared to before, here we have the number of sheep garrisoned at the x-axis and the food per minute generated on the y-axis. The old formula is shown in blue and the new formula is in red, where at 6 sheep you can see you're getting about the same rate as before, but garrisoning all 8 of your starting sheep now gives you 14% less than previously, as there's some diminishing returns. Whether that means you eat 2 of your sheep or just garrison them for an extra 3-ish food per minute is totally up to you. They also fixed an earlier bug where you could split sheep between mills to exploit it and get the highest rate possible, whereas now it counts your total herdables garrisoned, so you might as well just put them all in your safest mill if you have more than one. In addition to that, the Gurjars plus 50% bonus damage is now being reduced to plus 40%, as we saw for their siege elephant, and the elite Shravamsha rider's dodge recharge has also been slowed down, weakening that unit. At the same time, they're also having a minor tweak to their upgrade cost, which I think actually makes them a little easier to upgrade. Overall, Gurjars are obviously being nerfed in multiple ways, though recently, remember, this has been statistically the best civ in the game. Similarly, for Hindustanis, who are also doing quite well, the Ghulam's HP was reduced by 10, maybe to make it more comparable to the Eagle Warrior and Militia line. They're also losing access to the Halberdier, which is something we've seen before with Saracens, trading good camels for a bit of a weakness in the pike line. As I said, Hindustanis are doing quite well these days, and these also feel like pretty situational nerfs. It feels like they're applying a relatively light touch here, similar to Gurjars, and are probably open to further tweaking if this doesn't have the impact they're hoping for. Remember, Indians were already a pretty strong civ prior to the DLC, and were only improved as they were reworked into the Hindustanis. Moving on from some strong civs though, now let's take a look at the Koreans. Their lone change in this patch is that their war wagons are going to lose a cavalry archer armor, which is basically a small buff to skirmishers against them. Koreans are actually a mid to bottom tier civ at the moment, but this is also a pretty modest nerf that I don't think will really move the needle. And finally, we have the Sicilians, whose bonus damage resistance is softening from -50% to -33%. Sicilians are among my favorite civs to play, so I'm trying not to take this too hard. Considering Sicilians statistically have only been above average in the late game, I assume that's what's being targeted. And the two units there that jump to mind are the Cavalier and Arbalester, which are now going to take one fewer hit from their counters. I am a little unsure why an average to weak civ is losing a big chunk of its most interesting bonus, but maybe I just like all the crazy calculations and havoc this created in various matchups. If anything, I think the Sicilians' Imperial unique tech is what lets their Cavalier run away with things, and it's notable that every Sicilian unit needs to take this nerf instead of just the Cavalier, which I agree could be overwhelming in certain situations and especially at raiding. That said, the devs are probably weighing general balance against pro level, and in fairness may have had other unit matchups in mind as well. The final civ changes came as a big package, which was a bunch of treadmill cranes swapping around, with some civilizations gaining and others losing access to that tech. For most players, I doubt they would know if these civilizations already had treadmill crane or not, and it's a pretty situational tech outside of deathmatch, though it's interesting to see Sicilians are again being nerfed here. With all of the changes, I'm becoming increasingly confident going against Sicilians when deathmatch is on the line. Of course, there were plenty of other tweaks and fixes, notably for the AI and Empire Wars, making sure civilizations were getting their intended bonuses, but nothing that really jumped out at me as a massive change worth highlighting. A couple of cool new features are coming in this patch though. Both rematch shortcuts and in-game ranked map pool voting are welcome additions, though there isn't any voting going on at the moment. Being able to immediately rematch with someone you just played is going to be a great addition, though my understanding is that rematches are unranked and more designed for practice games or tournaments than strictly something for the ranked ladder. There's also a note where they mention shrinking some of the graphic files, which hopefully means the game is smoother and easier to play for average to low-end computers, though it's hard to say for sure as there's obviously much more that goes into running the game smoothly than just file size. But that's the highlights of the patch, and most important to me, we're seeing some nerfs for Gurjaras and Hindustanis, which we got, and some of the low-flying civs like Bengalis also received some much-needed attention. That'll do it for this one though. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.